They say you can't pick your neighbors, but let me tell you something. Sometimes your neighbors pick you. Or, in my case, they pick a fight they can't win. And this one started in the worst place imaginable. It was quiet, too quiet for a funeral. I remember the wind moving just enough to nudge the flag on the coffin. That flag meant something. We earned that one. The man we were burying, James Miller, served 2 tours before cancer got him. We stood there, hands over hearts, trying to hold it together. That's when the black SUV pulled up. The tires crunched over gravel like it was chewing the silence to pieces. Doors slammed. Out stepped Karen in a floral blazer, clipboard clutched like a weapon. She didn't even wait for the pastor to finish. "This land is within the homeowner association's jurisdiction," she announced, loud enough for the dead to hear. "This individual died owing back dues." I blinked. Everyone froze. A few heads turned toward me. I'd sponsored the burial, even lent my land for it since James never had kin. Now this woman, this suburban tyrant, was turning it into a courtroom. "You're trespassing," I said, my voice low. My hands were in my pockets, but I could feel them curling into fists. She smiled like someone who knew the law better than justice. "If you're not an association member, you will be. Consider this your notice. You ever been humiliated in front of people who respected you?" That's how it started, that moment right there. Karen, flanked by 2 off-duty cops she called community officers, trying to claim federal soil as her suburban kingdom. This happened to me, and if you're watching Karenology, you know, it's never just a misunderstanding. Let me back up. James bought that little parcel of land years ago, way before the developers came sniffing around. When the homeowner association popped up like a weed, they claimed jurisdiction over anything within a mile. James ignored them. So did I. That land was his, free and clear. But now that he was gone, they saw a chance. After the funeral, I found a folded notice pinned under my windshield wiper. Intent to annex. Non-compliance will result in penalties. And at the bottom, Karen's crooked signature like a coffee stain. I wish I could say I laughed. I didn't. Instead, I took it home, unfolded it on the kitchen table, and stared at it while my coffee went cold. You ever get that crawling feeling like someone just stepped over your last nerve? I called the number listed. A man named Stewart picked up. Their treasurer, apparently. I told him politely where he could shove their annexation. He responded with legal jargon I stopped listening to halfway through. I hung up. The next morning, my mailbox was gone. Not knocked over, gone, post-clean cut like a surgeon had done it. Karen left a note in its place. Unregistered structures are subject to removal. Funny thing is, I've been through worse, but this felt like a different kind of war. One fought not with bullets, but paper, shame, and bureaucratic poison. So I drove down to their clubhouse, little glass building next to the tennis court no one uses. Walked in and asked to see Karen. Receptionist gave me that smile you give a dog before you kick it. "She's in a meeting." Then interrupted. Karen stepped out wearing that same smug expression she had at the funeral, like she couldn't imagine anyone challenging her authority. "Mr. Hale," she said, "did you have a question about your dues?" "Yeah. What grave do I have to dig to make this nonsense stop?" She blinked, lips tightening. "You're in violation of Code 47C regarding Association Expansion Authority. It would be wise to cooperate." I leaned in. "And it would be wise to leave my land alone. You don't know who you're messing with." She laughed. Real, condescending, echoing in the lobby like she owned the world. But here's what she didn't know. I wasn't just some grumpy old vet with a worn-out truck and a backyard grill. I was trained in surveillance, counter-pressure tactics, and asymmetric response. I had friends in places HOA presidents pray they never meet. And I wasn't going to use the law. I was going to use fear. What would you do if someone tried to erase your dignity in front of your entire community? I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, from the itch. That deep burning itch in your bones that only shows up when someone tries to make you small. When someone paints over everything you built with their rules, their signs, their smug little notes in plastic sleeves. I sat on my porch till the sky started bleeding orange, coffee in one hand, the HOA letter in the other. You ever look at a piece of paper and feel like it's laughing at you? I'd been disrespected before, but this wasn't just a power play. It was a warning shot. and I knew the second one would come faster. It did. By noon, Karen and her two goons were back. This time, they brought a ladder. I watched from the living room as one of them climbed up and bolted a metal sign to the edge of my front gate. Bright green, all caps, now under association covenant oversight. No vote, no request, just a declaration. So I stepped outside. You putting up signs now? Karen didn't even turn. Notification of expansion. This property is now under compliance. That's so. The guy on the ladder was just finishing when I reached up and yanked the whole damn thing clean off. Screws popped. He yelped, nearly fell. Karen spun around like I just slapped her. That's destruction of official notice. No, that's me reclaiming my gate. You want to put something else up? You better bring backup. She pointed. You'll regret this. Already do. Should have slammed that gate on you the first time you stepped foot here. Her boys moved in like they thought it was about to get physical. I stood my ground, didn't blink, didn't flinch. And eventually, they backed off. But I knew that wasn't the end. So I made a call. Used a number I hadn't touched in years. One of those numbers they tell you not to use unless you've got a damn good reason. Yeah, came the voice. It's Hale. I need a paper trail on a group calling themselves the Homeowner Association of Willow Creek. Anything off record? Non-public actions, especially enforcement activity. The line went quiet for a second. You pulling me out of bed for zoning drama? They made it personal. He exhaled. Give me 48 hours. Now, here's the thing. I wasn't planning to go nuclear, but I needed leverage, not just to fight back, to make them hesitate. So I waited, and while I waited, I gave them rope. I acted like I folded. You ever done that? Let someone think they won just to see how far they'd go? I put the sign back up. That same night, under a flashlight, I screwed it back onto the gate myself. Even waved at Karen the next day when she walked her ridiculous teacup poodle past my house. She smiled, waved back, like a queen in a poison kingdom. 2 days later, the file arrived. Confidential scans, photos, handwritten notes. My contact, we'll call him Lewis, sent me everything. And brother, what I saw lit a fire in my gut. Turns out, this wasn't their first rodeo. Karen and her HOA crew had pulled the same stunt 3 counties over. Forced membership, forged notices, even false police reports to scare folks into compliance. And here's the kicker. They were under federal watch. No active investigation, but red flagged. 1 step away from a full-blown inquiry. Now I had something more powerful than lawsuits or protests. I had knowledge, and knowledge makes people nervous. What would you do if you knew your enemy's secret, and they didn't know you knew it? That next morning, I put on my old boots, grabbed the envelope, and walked right into their next community meeting. And just like that, everything started to shift. You ever walk into a room and feel it shift the second your boots hit the floor? That's what happened when I stepped into the Willow Creek Community Center that morning. Polished concrete, too many folding chairs, fake plants, and plastic pots. Karen had staged the place like she was running for Congress. People sat in neat rows, sipping coffee out of little paper cups. Most of them were just tired folks trying to keep their yards clean and their lives quiet. They didn't know they were being played. But I knew, and I had the papers in my hand to prove it. Karen was already talking. Her voice had that syrupy edge, like she was doing them a favor. We've extended jurisdiction to include the Northeast properties, for your protection, of course. I didn't wait. I walked straight to the center aisle, didn't break stride, didn't ask permission, just held up the manila envelope and said, loud and clear, "You ever wonder what someone like her is protecting you from?" Heads turned, she froze. "Mr. Hale," she said, sweet as a spoiled peach. "This is a members-only meeting." And funny, I didn't sign up. But your goons keep stapling paperwork to my house like I did. I opened the folder and let the first few pages flutter out onto the front row. A couple of people bent down, picked them up. Their faces changed. Karen took a step forward. "This is inappropriate. Security!" But no one moved, not even her muscle. Turns out when people smell blood, they get curious. "I've got documents from 3 counties," I said. "Witness reports. A list of forced memberships, falsified citations, even one incident where your name showed up on a fraudulent police complaint. Karen's face went white, then red. This is slander. It's federal paperwork. I held up a page. Black bar stamps and all. And you want to know the real kicker? You're flagged. Karen Whitmore, under watch. Not yet indicted, but close enough that a wrong move in this meeting could tip it. That landed. A low murmur moved through the room. One guy stood up and said, "Is this true?" Karen's voice cracked for the first time. "He's lying. He's bitter. He's not even a member." I smiled. Exactly. You could feel the balance shift. People weren't cheering, but they weren't with her anymore. They were watching, waiting. Now, I didn't plan to destroy her right there. That would have been too easy. And I wasn't after revenge. I was after leverage. So I did something else. I turned and walked out. No speech, no mic drop, just silence. Leave them stewing in questions. Let doubt do its work. Back home, I sat on the porch, cracked a beer before noon, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, I got a visit. Not from Karen, from one of her board members. Young guy, nervous, wore a tie that didn't fit and shoes too clean for real work. "Can we talk?" I let him speak. He tried to sell me a compromise, drop the documents, let them review the paperwork internally. I told him no. Told him they had 1 week to remove every structure, notice, sign, and clause related to my property, or the next person knocking would be federal. I watched the color drain out of his face. He left. But that wasn't the end. The next day my gate was open. Not broken, not unlocked, just wide open. Like someone wanted to show me they could still walk in. Inside, the sign I'd put back was gone again. But this time, they left something in its place. A single photo tucked under a stone. It was me, sitting on my porch, that very week. Taken from the road. That's when I knew. They were rattled, but not done. And now it wasn't just about property lines. It was personal. What would you do if the people who tried to bully you now tried to scare you into silence? I'll tell you what I did next. And it sure as hell wasn't filing a complaint. I took that photo and stared at it for a long time. It was grainy, slight tilt. Like whoever took it was nervous. But it was recent. I was in my chair, same flannel shirt, same drink in hand, same boots kicked up on the railing. The message wasn't subtle. You're being watched. And not in the casual HOA way either. This wasn't about compliance or covenants. This was about pressure, about fear. Thing is, they picked the wrong old man. You ever been hunted for real? Had eyes on you in a place where stepping on the wrong twig meant you didn't go home? I had. And that taught me one thing. The only way to handle a shadow is to shine a bigger damn light. So I started making calls. Not the kind that need burner phones or black bags. Just folks I trusted. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Men and women who now worked in places where Karen's little games didn't reach. One of them, retired now, used to handle threat assessments for private contractors. I sent him the photo, told him nothing except, "This showed up, confirm it came from the outside." His reply came in 3 words, zoom, angle, shoulder. That was all I needed. Whoever took it wasn't HOA, wasn't a neighbor, this was hired. Karen had escalated. So I did too. I started documenting everything. Not to go to court, no, that's what she wanted. That was her battlefield. I needed mine. I bought a drone, quiet, small, easy to fly. And I sent it over the HOA office one late afternoon. Nothing illegal, just observation, watching the watchers. And guess what I saw? Karen, in the back lot, talking to a guy in a black pickup. They didn't see the drone, but I saw the envelope exchange. I had my own photo now. I printed it, pinned it to a board in my shed next to the one they left me. 2 sides, 2 moves, 2 players staring at each other. I also noticed something else. Lately, a few of the other board members were missing. I used to see them walk dogs, drive to work, mow lawns. But now, gone, like Karen had pulled them in, close. Or shut them out. And then there was Liza, mid-30s, lived 2 houses down. Single mom, works evenings. We never talked much, just the occasional wave. But this week, she started leaving for work through the back alley. I caught her one morning. "Liza," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Everything all right?" She flinched, then exhaled. "They came to my door, asked questions about you, said you were dangerous." I waited. Then they asked about my son. My jaw clenched. Said if I wanted to keep my place, I'd better be careful who I associate with. You ever hear something so wrong your stomach drops before your mind catches up? I nodded, told her she wasn't alone, that if they came back, she should send them to me, but I saw it in her eyes. They already got what they wanted. Fear. They weren't just coming for land now. They were infecting the neighborhood, whisper by whisper, threat by threat. That's how bullies work, not with fists, with isolation. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I cleaned the shed, dusted off the steel locker in the corner, the one with the rusted padlock and that sound when it opens like something's waking up. Inside were memories, field notes, training manuals, a couple gadgets that never made it to civilian shelves. And the badge. Federal issue, heavy, real, the kind that doesn't expire. I hadn't used it in decades, swore I wouldn't. But this wasn't about me anymore. They crossed a line when they went after that woman and her boy. So I packed a duffel. Not with weapons, with leverage. Photos, voice memos, a printed map of every false expansion zone they'd filed. And I waited for her next move. Because bullies don't stop until you take something from them. And I was about to take her power. Ever feel the calm before a storm you know you started on purpose? That's where I was. And she had no idea what was coming next. The thing about a well-timed silence, it hits harder than any outburst. I stayed quiet for 3 days. Didn't confront her, didn't respond. Just let the tension hang in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. And the longer I said nothing, the more she scrambled. HOA notices tripled, fence inspections, brush violations, even a letter claiming my porch swing was structurally non-compliant. They were flailing, and desperate people make sloppy mistakes. I waited until Friday. That's when the neighborhood held its monthly community wellness event. HOA Speak for Lemonade, folding chairs, and soft intimidation. Karen always stood front and center, greeting people like a queen on parade. But this time, I got there first. I parked right in front, didn't bother with the invitation, just stepped onto the grass, duffel in hand, the same one I'd packed days ago. People saw me and stiffened, conversations paused mid-sentence. I didn't say a word, just pulled out a white plastic folding table, slapped it open, and laid out 3 stacks, photos, signed affidavits from the other county, and a laminated map with every fraudulent HOA expansion circled in red. Karen saw it from across the park. She froze. Then, she tried to smile, walked over with that same rehearsed charm, every step of hers saying, "Stay calm," but her eyes, wild. "Mr. Hale," she said, almost sweet. "This isn't the place." I looked around. Looks public to me. "You're causing confusion." "No, Karen, I'm providing clarity." A few people wandered closer. I didn't speak to the crowd. I just talked like I was telling a story, calm, low, like a neighbor filling you in over coffee. "Did you know Karen filed retroactive claims to absorb private properties into the association, even while those properties were under federal registry? I got the stamps to prove it." Someone from the crowd asked, "Is that legal?" Karen interrupted, "Of course it is. Everything we do is voted on. Who voted to surveil residents with private contractors? Who approved intimidation tactics on single moms?" That landed. Gasps, eyes turning, people shifting uncomfortably. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Then someone asked the question that cracked it wide open. "Why is his name on our dues ledger if he never signed up?" And right there, the spell broke. I didn't press further, just packed my papers and left the map, told them they could keep it, said nothing else. I got home before sunset. Didn't even sit down before the knock came. It was Liza. "You rattled her." "Didn't mean to," I lied. She handed me an envelope. "This was dropped at my place by mistake. It's from the HOA, addressed to someone else." I opened it. Inside, a typed report. Assessment of target engagement. My name was highlighted. Details from my yard, my routines, even notes on my dog's schedule. They weren't just watching, they were tracking. And they'd made a mistake. Because now I had hard proof this wasn't administrative. This was calculated. And they left it in the hands of a neighbor they didn't bother to respect. You ever feel the tide shift? Not all at once, But in those tiny ripples that warn of a wave, it was shifting. But I knew better than to celebrate. Bullies don't quit when they're cornered. They lash out, and the next move would be theirs. So I spent the rest of the night in the shed, not sleeping, not planning revenge, planning insurance. The kind that makes people rethink everything before they open their mouth. Because I wasn't just going to win. I was going to end the whole damn show. The hardest part about war isn't the bullets. It's the waiting. That quiet stretch between moves where you don't know if the enemy's retreating or reloading. And that's where I was. Karen didn't show her face for 3 days. No calls, no notices, no smug little flyers tucked under windshield wipers. But I knew better than to think she was done. Because people like her don't walk away. They regroup. So I started reinforcing the property, not with walls or fences, with records, witness logs, voice memos. Liza helped. So did old man Creighton down the road. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd been watching. Funny what happens when you show people they're not alone. I installed motion sensors, low-profile cameras, updated the drone routes, and in my shed, I kept a fireproof box, locked tight. Inside, everything. The file, the photos, the HOA's surveillance log. Copies stored on 2 encrypted flash drives, one buried out back, one mailed to a friend in D.C. Insurance. Because if this thing was going to go nuclear, I'd be ready. I didn't wait long. It started with noise. 2 a.m., the sound of tires on gravel, then metal scraping, then silence. I grabbed the flashlight, stepped outside. They'd chained my gate shut, not locked, chained. Big rusted links, like something from a scrapyard. A note dangled from the middle. Non-compliant member, entrance restricted pending review. My own property, my land. Sealed by people who hadn't earned a single inch of it. You ever feel rage so quiet it almost comes out calm? I went back to the shed, pulled on my coat, grabbed the bolt cutters, didn't rush, didn't make a sound. By dawn, the chain was gone, and in its place, a new sign. One I made myself. White paint, black letters, simple. This gate monitored by federal authority. Trespass, felony. You sure you want to be on that list? Karen saw it around 9 a.m. She didn't stop. She just drove by slowly, eyes forward, pretending not to read. But I know she did, and so did every board member who called me a paranoid relic 2 weeks ago. The shift was real now. Even the neighborhood dogs stopped barking when I walked by. But Karen wasn't out of moves. That night, I got a visit from someone new. He showed up in a rented sedan, business casual, the kind of guy who orders decaf and smiles without blinking. Mr. Hale, I represent a private arbitration service contracted by the Willow Creek Homeowner Association. We're here to discuss de-escalation. I let him speak for 5 minutes. Buzzwords, resolution, mutual benefit, something about preventing litigation. Then I opened the door wider and pointed to the shed. You see that building back there? That's where I keep the truth, not theories, not warnings, proof. He blinked. You came here with a script. I suggest you go back with a message. Tell Karen she's done expanding, she's done threatening, and if she tries one more move, she's not going to get a letter. She's going to get a convoy. He didn't ask for clarification. He just left. I stood in the driveway a while after he pulled away, looking at the stars, wondering how many other neighborhoods were going through this. How many other people got folded into fake rules, cornered by phony power, and never pushed back. Then I remembered something from a long time ago. During a mission, our unit used to say, control the terrain, and you control the war. Karen thought her terrain was paper. Mine was people. And people were waking up. The next morning, Lisa told me something strange. Karen had called for a closed board meeting. No residents allowed, no notes, no recording. That wasn't standard, that was fear. So I sent one more message. Printed on clean cardstock, delivered in a sealed envelope. No threats, just 2 sentences. I know what's coming, I'm ready. Are you? I never heard back. But by nightfall, the HOA website had a scheduled maintenance banner across every page. Their email contact went dark. The treasurer's phone number, disconnected. And Karen, she vanished. No morning walks, No SUV cruising past my gate, just silence. But silence from snakes isn't peace. It's coiling, and I was ready for the strike. There's a moment, right before something snaps, when the world goes still. That's where we were. Karen vanished, but the silence she left behind was heavier than all the noise that came before it. You could feel it in the way neighbors glanced over their shoulders, in the way the air hung dense between houses like a storm crouching just out of sight. But I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. And then the final move came. It started with a knock. Not at my door. At Liza's. She called me, voice low and scared. "They're here!" I was halfway out the door before she finished. 2 men stood in her driveway. Suits, not HOA regulars. One held a clipboard, the other was filming. Karen wasn't with them, but her shadow dripped off them like oil. I didn't even stop at the gate, just walked straight toward them. "Afternoon," I said, flat. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." She called me. That makes it my concern. They tried to box me out, told me they were conducting a compliance audit for unauthorized structures, said Liza's back porch didn't meet safety standards, that her yard violated visual harmony guidelines. And then they handed her a notice. $4,200 fine. 14 grand. For a few boards and a patch of garden her son planted. You ever feel your blood turn cold? I stepped in front of her, took the notice, and held it to the sun. The signature line? Karen Whitmore. She was gone, but she was still pulling strings. And that's when I stopped playing defense. I turned to the one with the camera and said, "Zoom in, you're going to want to catch this." Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out the badge. Real, federal, still valid under the clause most people forget exists. They froze. Not dramatic, just subtle stiffening, the kind that tells you a man just realized he made a mistake. You've been delivering fraudulent claims under the name of a flagged entity. You're trespassing on private property. You're filming without a warrant. And you just handed a single mother a fake citation signed by a woman under quiet federal watch. The guy with the clipboard started to shake. I stepped forward. "You've got 30 seconds to leave. After that, I stop calling you contractors and start calling you suspects." They left. Didn't even bother taking the clipboard. Liza started crying. Not loud, just that quiet relief that comes when pressure finally breaks. I stood there a while, watching the sun drop over her roof, and realized it wasn't about me anymore. It was about every damn person they tried to choke with silence. So I made one final move. I opened that fireproof box, took out everything, the files, the drone photos, the surveillance docs, and I made 6 perfect copies. Then I called in a favor. See, you don't spend years in the field without making friends who know how to aim not just a weapon, but a story. A week later, an article dropped. Not in the local paper, in a national one. Title, "The HOA That Went Too Far, Inside a Suburban Surveillance Network." Karen's face wasn't on the front page, but her name was in the 3rd paragraph. Within 48 hours, the HOA board dissolved. Every member either resigned or lawyered up. 3 lawsuits opened. One of them was mine, but not for money. Just for one clause. Permanent removal of Karen Whitmore from any position of authority tied to residential governance. That's all I wanted, to end it at the root. I didn't show up to the hearing in a suit. I wore my boots, my flannel, same jacket I wore the day they tried to chain me out of my own home. Judge looked at the file, read through it, and said, "Mr. Hale, I assume you're not interested in settling." I said, "Only in finishing." And we did. Karen never spoke a word. She sat there, face drawn, watching everything fall apart like wet paper. Afterwards, I walked past her without a glance. No gloating, no smile, just done. You ever win a fight and feel more tired than triumphant? That was me. But there was peace in it. I went back home, took down the sign on my gate, replaced it with one I carved myself. It read, "This land answers to no one but truth." And I meant every damn word. If this story hit home, if it reminded you of something you've seen or lived, then maybe it's time we all start carving our own signs. The kind no HOA can ever take down.